Moving ahead, the reformer Martin Luther in the 16th century writes about this parable also. Luther claims that the vineyard is the kingdom of God. Oh! What? Remember that originally the vineyard was a foreclosed land, taken away from peasants by bribed kangaroo courts. In Luther's understanding, the vineyard means the kingdom of God. Luther says, quote, the vineyard is the kingdom of God, which God took from the former tenants. Who? The Papists. A lot of people in this room. Hey, it works. By the way, I admire Martin Luther a lot. He had a lot of problems. There were a lot of problems in his day. Don't knock on Martin Luther that much. But look at this. So in Luther, the tenants, the wicked people throughout history are the Catholics. Recall that Martin Luther began the Protestant Reformation, and there were good reasons for reform. So reading this parable, Luther decides it's clear, it's obvious that the tenants, the bad guys of history, St. Irenaeus, right, are made up of the Pope and all his followers, and the vineyard, that's the kingdom of God. For Luther, the parable of the wicked tenants talks about how God took the kingdom of God from the Papists and gave it to the churches of the Reformation, and to who? The German elites, the German princes. And you might recall the Peasants Rebellion, where the princes, Luther preached in favor of the German princes, and guess what parable he used to justify the princes brutally suppressing the peasants? During Luther's lifetime, a peasants' revolt emerged in the German kingdoms. Luther sided with the princes against the peasants with this parable. We are really now 180 degrees opposite to what the pre-Paschal Jesus intended by the parable of the tenants, whatever its original form was. Not to be outdone, the reformer John Calvin turns the parable of the tenants into a double allegory. First, he offers what he calls a realistic allegory. See, we're going rationalistic now, realistic. And then a spiritual allegory. I didn't know that spirit is not real, but okay. See where we're going in Western world? By Catholics too. In the first realistic allegory, drawing from Eusebius, John Calvin says the parable speaks about the Jewish rejection of Christ and Christian triumph. Again, anti-Semitic and triumphalistic about Christianity, divine justifying killing the Jews. How about that one? So that's the realistic allegory. Then the second spiritual allegory, drawing from Thomas Aquinas, Calvin says the parable speaks about self-control. Now that might be nice, St. Thomas Aquinas and John Calvin, but is that what Jesus originally meant?